Hook. They mocked a homeless Navy SEAL for inheriting a useless island until his dog uncovered a buried military secret. Opening. They laughed when a homeless Navy SEAL inherited a worthless island. His dog found what they hid. Logan Mercer had lost everything: his home, his family, and nearly his faith in the world. Living from an aging pickup beside a forgotten harbor, he was the man people looked through, not at. Then a dead commander's will handed him a windswept island nobody wanted. The town laughed. But when his loyal K9, Shadow, caught a scent hidden beneath the cliffs, they uncovered a secret powerful enough to shake decades of lies and change both their lives forever. Comment 1 if you'd follow your dog into the unknown, or 0 if you'd walk away, and tell us where you're watching from. The rain came sideways in Blackstone Point. It swept across the harbor in silver sheets, rattling against rusted fishing boats and abandoned lobster traps stacked along the docks. The Atlantic was angry that morning, throwing dark waves against the breakwater while gulls circled overhead, their cries carried away by the wind. Most people hurried past the waterfront with their heads down. Nobody noticed the old blue pickup truck parked near the far end of Pier 7. Or maybe they did. Maybe they simply chose not to look. Inside the truck, Logan Mercer opened his eyes. For a few seconds, he didn't know where he was. A pounding heartbeat echoed in his ears, the smell of smoke, the sound of shouting, a distant explosion. His breathing quickened. Then a wet nose pressed gently against his hand. Logan blinked. The war disappeared. The truck returned. The rain returned. The harbor returned. And beside him sat Shadow. The German shepherd's dark eyes never left his face. The dog had learned long ago how to recognize the signs, the nightmares, the panic, the memories. Logan slowly reached over and rested a hand on Shadow's neck. The thick fur was warm, real, solid. "Morning, buddy," he whispered. Shadow's tail tapped once against the seat. The dog never needed many words. For nearly 8 years, they had survived together in places most people would never willingly go. Deserts, mountains, cities torn apart by conflict, and now a harbor town that barely remembered either of them existed. Logan pushed himself upright. His back ached. The truck wasn't much of a home. An old blanket covered the back seat. A cooler held what little food they had left. A flashlight hung from the dashboard. Everything he owned fit inside the cab. Everything except the memories. Those followed him everywhere. Outside, fishermen were already preparing their boats. Engines growled to life. Chains rattled. Voices echoed across the water. The world moved forward. Logan often felt as if he had somehow been left behind. He stepped out into the cold morning air. The rain immediately soaked his jacket. Shadow jumped down beside him. The dog stretched before falling naturally into step at Logan's side. Always close, always watching, always ready. They walked toward the harbor cafe. The owner, an elderly woman named Ruth Callahan, was opening the front door. She smiled when she saw Shadow. She always smiled at Shadow. "Morning, handsome," she said, scratching behind the dog's ears. Shadow accepted the attention with quiet dignity. Ruth looked at Logan. "You eat yet?" Logan shook his head. She disappeared inside and returned moments later carrying a paper bag. "Leftover biscuits. Bacon, too. I can pay you next week. You've been saying that for 6 months." A faint smile touched Logan's face. "Thank you." Ruth waved him away. "Take care of that dog." Logan looked down at Shadow. "He's the one taking care of me." For a moment, Ruth's expression softened. She knew enough not to ask questions. Everyone in town knew Logan had been in the military. Most didn't know much beyond that. And Logan preferred it that way. The fewer questions people asked, the easier life became. He and Shadow settled beneath an awning overlooking the harbor. The rain drummed steadily above them. Logan split the bacon in half. Shadow accepted his portion carefully. Not once in all their years together had the dog ever snatched food from his hand. Discipline remained even after retirement, especially for Shadow. The German Shepherd had earned his gray muzzle honestly. Scars marked one ear. A thin white line crossed his shoulder beneath the fur. Each mark carried a story. Some Logan remembered. Some he wished he could forget. Across the harbor, laughter erupted near one of the fishing boats. Several men were unloading supplies. One of them glanced toward Logan. The smile on his face wasn't friendly. "Hey, Mercer?" Logan ignored him. The man continued. "Heard the shelters got openings again." More laughter followed. Another fisherman joined in. "Maybe they let dogs stay free." The group chuckled. Logan focused on the ocean. Years ago, comments like that might have started a fight. Now they barely registered. People often mocked what they didn't understand. And most of Blackstone Point understood very little about men who came home carrying invisible wounds. Shadow's ears tilted slightly toward the voices. Logan rested a hand on his neck. The dog immediately relaxed. "No," Logan said quietly. "They aren't worth it." The fisherman eventually returned to work. The laughter faded, but the loneliness remained. It always did. By mid-morning, Logan found work helping unload cargo from a supply truck near the marina warehouse. The pay wasn't much, a few dollars, enough to buy food, enough to survive another day. That had become his definition of success. The warehouse manager barely looked at him while handing over instructions. Boxes, equipment, fishing gear. Hours passed beneath gray skies. Rainwater soaked through Logan's boots. His shoulders burned from lifting. Still, he welcomed the exhaustion. Physical pain was easier than memory. Far easier. Late in the afternoon, a loud metallic crash echoed through the loading yard. The sound wasn't unusual. A dropped crate, a falling chain. Nothing more. But for Logan, the world instantly changed. His vision narrowed. His pulse exploded. The harbor disappeared. Suddenly he was somewhere else. Another continent. Another year. Dust filled the air. Radio chatter screamed through a headset. A teammate shouted his name. Then came the blast. The same blast that had haunted his sleep for years. Logan froze. His breathing became shallow. His hands trembled. The panic attack arrived like a wave. Fast, powerful, relentless. Then Shadow moved. The German Shepherd immediately pressed against Logan's leg. A trained response. One perfected through years of partnership. The dog nudged his hand, then his chest, then sat directly in front of him, forcing eye contact. Logan stared into those familiar brown eyes, slowly, very slowly. The harbor returned, the warehouse returned, the present returned. The panic loosened its grip. A dock worker nearby watched silently. For the first time all day, nobody laughed, nobody spoke, because some things didn't need explanation. Logan knelt beside Shadow. "Good boy." The words cracked slightly. Shadow leaned into him. Steady, patient, loyal, the way he always had been. That evening, clouds settled low across Blackstone Point. The town lights reflected against wet pavement. Traffic thinned. Fishing boats returned to harbor one by one. Their engines hummed through the gathering darkness. Logan counted his earnings beneath a street lamp. $34. Enough for dog food. Enough for fuel. Enough for another day. Nothing more. He stopped by Earl Benson's repair shop before heading back to the truck. The old mechanic was closing for the night. Earl looked up from his toolbox. "Mercer." Logan nodded. "Earl." The old man glanced at Shadow, then back at Logan. "Truck still running?" Barely. Earl grunted. Bring it by tomorrow. I can't afford repairs. Didn't ask if you could. Logan hesitated. People like Earl were rare. The kind who saw a person instead of a problem. Thanks. Earl shrugged. Just keep showing up. The mechanic locked the shop and disappeared into the rain. Logan watched him go, then looked toward the ocean. Dark waves rolled endlessly beyond the harbor. Cold, distant, unforgiving. A lot like life. By the time Logan returned to the truck, night had completely fallen. Rain tapped softly against the roof. Shadow curled up on the blanket in the back seat. Logan sat behind the wheel for a long time. The harbor lights shimmered across the water. Somewhere nearby, music drifted from a bar. People laughed, talked, lived. The simple things. The things that had once seemed permanent. He reached into the glove compartment and removed an old photograph. The edges were worn, the colors fading. A woman smiled beside a young boy. His family. The life he had lost long before he lost his home. Logan stared at the picture until the memories became too heavy. Then he carefully placed it back. Outside, the rain continued. Inside, silence settled over the truck. Shadow lifted his head briefly. Checking. Always checking. When he saw Logan was calm, he rested again. Logan looked at the dog, his partner, his protector, his last connection to a life that often felt impossibly far away. People in Blackstone Point saw a homeless veteran sleeping in an old truck. They saw failure, bad luck, a man whose story had ended. What they didn't see was the battle he fought every single day, the battle to keep moving, the battle to keep breathing, the battle to believe there was still a reason to wake up tomorrow. Outside, a foghorn echoed across the harbor. Long, lonely, ancient. Logan listened until the sound faded into darkness. Then he closed his eyes. Beside him, Shadow remained awake a little longer, watching, guarding, waiting. Neither of them knew that before another week had passed, a letter would arrive in Blackstone Point. A letter carrying the name of a dead commander, a forgotten island, and a secret hidden beneath the sea, a secret that would change both their lives forever. The rain stopped sometime before dawn. When Logan Mercer opened his eyes, a pale gray light was spreading across Blackstone Point Harbor. Fog drifted low over the water, wrapping the fishing boats in ghostly layers that blurred their outlines. For a moment, everything felt strangely quiet. Shadow was already awake. The German Shepherd sat upright in the back seat, staring through the windshield, alert, focused, watching something. Logan followed the dog's gaze. A dark sedan was pulling slowly into the parking lot near Pier 7. Not a local vehicle. Too clean. Too expensive. It rolled to a stop several yards away. A woman stepped out carrying a leather briefcase. She appeared to be in her late 30s, dressed in a navy coat that looked entirely out of place among the fishermen, dock workers, and weather-beaten trucks that filled the harbor. Shadow's ears rose immediately. Logan sighed. Whoever she is, she's not here for us. The woman glanced around the lot. Then she walked directly toward the truck. Apparently, she was. When she stopped beside the driver's window, she offered a polite smile. Logan Mercer? Logan lowered the window halfway. Depends who's asking. My name is Monica Reed. She held out a business card. Attorney at law. Portland, Maine. Logan looked from the card back to her face. I don't need a lawyer. I'm not here because you need one. Something in her expression shifted. A hint of sympathy. Maybe uncertainty. I've been trying to locate you for 3 weeks. Logan frowned. Why? Monica opened her briefcase. She removed a sealed envelope. The paper looked expensive, official. The the kind of thing that rarely arrived for people living in pickup trucks. I'm sorry to inform you that Commander Walter Grayson passed away 2 months ago. The words landed heavily. For several seconds, Logan simply stared. Walter Grayson. The name reached back through years of memory. Training exercises, deployment briefings, long nights overseas. The old commander had never been easy to impress, but he had been respected, deeply respected. Logan hadn't seen him in almost a decade. I didn't know. Monica nodded. Most people didn't. Logan looked away toward the harbor. The sea was calm now. The silence felt different. Shadow slowly rested his head against Logan's arm. The dog remembered the name too. Animals never forgot voices they trusted. What does this have to do with me? Logan finally asked. Monica hesitated. Then she handed him the envelope. You were named in his will. The harbor suddenly seemed much quieter. Logan blinked once. Then again. I think you've got the wrong person. I don't. She removed another document. The instructions were very specific. Logan stared at the envelope. A strange feeling settled into his chest. Not hope. He had learned long ago not to trust hope. More like confusion. Walter Grayson had family, money, property, influential friends. Why would he leave anything to a washed-up veteran sleeping in a truck? Monica cleared her throat. The reading is tomorrow afternoon. I can't get to Portland. It isn't in Portland. She glanced toward the harbor. Commander Grayson requested that it take place in Blackstone Point. Now Logan was even more confused. Why? I don't know. It was the first genuinely honest answer she'd given. After a moment, Monica closed her briefcase. I'll meet you tomorrow at 1. Then she turned and walked away. The sedan disappeared into the fog, leaving Logan alone with his thoughts and questions. Lots of questions. Shadow nudged the envelope with his nose. Logan looked down. You think I should open it? The dog's tail thumped once. That was answer enough. Inside was a single card. No legal language. No instructions. Just one handwritten sentence. The handwriting was unmistakable. Walter Grayson's. Trust your dog. He'll find what I couldn't protect forever. Logan read it 3 times. The message made no sense. What exactly was Shadow supposed to find? And what needed protecting? By the following afternoon, nearly everyone in Blackstone Point seemed aware that something unusual was happening. Word traveled quickly in small towns, especially when the subject involved a homeless veteran and a dead commander. The will reading took place inside a conference room above the Harbor Commission building. The room overlooked the docks. Rain clouds drifted over the ocean beyond the windows. Monica stood at the front. Several relatives of Commander Grayson occupied the table. Well-dressed, comfortable, the sort of people who had never worried about where they would sleep. Logan immediately felt out of place. His jacket was faded. His boots were worn. Shadow settled quietly beside his chair. One of the relatives glanced at the dog and frowned. Another looked Logan up and down with barely concealed judgment. Monica began reading. The process lasted nearly an hour. Investment accounts, real estate, family heirlooms, cash distributions. The relatives seemed pleased, until the very end. Finally, Monica said, opening the last document, Commander Walter Grayson leaves one additional property. The room became attentive. Several people leaned forward, expecting something valuable, something significant. Monica adjusted her glasses. To Logan Mercer, former United States Navy SEAL, I leave full ownership of Gull Rock Island, located 20 miles off the coast of Maine, including all structures, land rights, and associated holdings. Silence. A very strange silence. Then someone laughed. A short bark of disbelief. Another joined in. Then another. The room quickly filled with amusement. Gull Rock? That pile of rocks? Seriously? One of the relatives shook his head. I haven't heard that name in 20 years. Another chuckled. The place doesn't even have electricity. More laughter followed. Logan remained silent. He wasn't sure what he felt. Confused. Embarrassed. Maybe both. An island sounded impressive until everyone else acted like it was worthless. Monica slid several documents across the table, along with an old folded map. The paper was yellow with age, weathered, fragile. Shadow immediately stood. The German shepherd moved closer. His nose touched the map, then touched it again. The dog's entire posture changed, focused, intense, almost as if he recognized something. Logan watched carefully. Shadow? The dog continued staring. Monica noticed. That's strange? What is? The commander specifically instructed that the map be given to you. She pointed toward a small note attached to one corner. Logan unfolded it. Again, the handwriting belonged to Grayson. Trust your dog. He'll know where to begin. A chill traveled down Logan's spine. This time it wasn't confusion. It was curiosity. Real curiosity. The kind he hadn't felt in years. When the meeting finally ended, the relatives left quickly, still laughing, still shaking their heads. One of them stopped beside Logan on the way out. You know what he gave you, right? Logan looked up. A worthless island. The man smiled. Exactly. Then he walked away. The room gradually emptied. Soon only Logan, Monica, and Shadow remained. Outside the windows, fog rolled across the harbor. The island's location was marked on the old map, a tiny dot surrounded by open ocean, remote, isolated, forgotten. Shadow placed a paw directly on the spot. Neither Logan nor Monica spoke. For some reason, the room suddenly felt colder, as if the dead commander had reached across time and placed a final mission in front of them, a mission nobody else could see. Monica carefully gathered the remaining documents. Do you plan to visit it? Logan stared at the island marked on the map, then at the message, then at Shadow. The German shepherd's eyes never left him. Waiting, patient, certain. For the first time in a long while, Logan felt something stir beneath the weight of grief and routine. A question, a possibility, a reason to move forward. He folded the map carefully. No. Monica looked surprised. Logan clipped the old note inside his jacket pocket. Then a faint smile appeared. The first genuine smile she'd seen from him. Not visit it. He looked down at Shadow. I think we're going to find out why Walter Grayson wanted us there. Shadow's tail thumped once against the floor. Outside, beyond the fog and the endless Atlantic, a forgotten island waited in silence. And somewhere on that island, hidden from the world, the first piece of a decades-old secret was waiting for them too. For the first time in years, Logan Mercer woke up thinking about tomorrow. The feeling was unfamiliar, almost uncomfortable. Hope had a way of disappointing people. He had learned that lesson long ago. Still, as pale morning light spread across Blackstone Point Harbor, he found himself unfolding the map again. Shadow sat beside him on the truck seat. The German shepherd's eyes followed every movement. The island was little more than a speck on the paper. A rough oval shape surrounded by handwritten notes and old navigation marks. No roads, no ferry routes, no modern landmarks. Just a lonely patch of rock sitting far out in the Atlantic. Walter Grayson had owned it for decades. Why? That question lingered in Logan's mind. The commander had never been a sentimental man. Everything Grayson did had purpose. Everything. Logan traced a finger across the map. The old paper crackled softly. On the lower corner sat a faded date, nearly 40 years old. Shadow suddenly leaned forward. His nose touched the island again. The same spot. The same reaction. Logan frowned. "What are you trying to tell me?" The dog only stared, as if the answer should have been obvious. By mid-morning, Logan found himself helping Earl Benson repair a damaged fishing winch behind the mechanic's workshop. Rain clouds drifted low over the harbor. The air smelled of salt, diesel fuel, and wet wood. Earl worked silently for several minutes before speaking. "Heard about the inheritance?" Logan wasn't surprised. Everybody had. "News travels fast. Not much else to do around here except talk." Logan smiled faintly. Earl tightened a bolt. "You gonna sell it?" "The island." "That's what people are saying." Logan wiped grease from his hands. "I haven't even seen it yet." Earl nodded thoughtfully. "Smart answer. What does that mean?" The old mechanic glanced toward the water. "Means you shouldn't trust people who suddenly become interested in your life." Logan looked at him carefully. "What people?" Earl hesitated, then shrugged. Probably nothing, but his expression suggested otherwise. Before Logan could ask more, a black SUV rolled into the repair yard. The vehicle looked expensive, far too expensive for Blackstone Point. Shadow immediately stood. Every muscle in the German shepherd's body tightened. His ears rose. His eyes locked onto the SUV. The reaction was instant and unusual. The driver's door opened. A tall man stepped out. Mid-50s, well-dressed, confident. The kind of confidence money often created. He smiled as he approached. "Mr. Mercer." Logan didn't answer immediately. The stranger extended a hand. Derek Holloway. The name was familiar. Everyone in town knew it. Derek Holloway owned marinas, warehouses, and several commercial properties along the coast. Some people admired him. Others didn't. Logan ignored the offered handshake. Derek smoothly lowered his hand. His smile never changed. "I heard about your inheritance." "I'm sure you did." Derek chuckled. "I appreciate honesty." Shadow moved closer to Logan's side. Watching. Waiting. The dog's eyes never left the businessman. Derek noticed. "Beautiful dog." Shadow let out a low growl. A deep warning. The sound surprised everyone, including Logan. Shadow rarely reacted to people. Years of military training had made him exceptionally disciplined. For him to growl at someone without cause was unusual. Very unusual. Derek's smile faded slightly. "Guess he doesn't like me." "No," Logan replied quietly. "I guess he doesn't." An awkward silence followed. The wind rattled loose metal sheets nearby. Somewhere across the harbor, a foghorn sounded. Derek cleared his throat. "I'll get straight to the point. I'd appreciate that." The businessman nodded. "I want to buy Gull Rock Island." Logan blinked. The directness caught him off guard. "You haven't even asked if it's for sale." "I'm asking now." "Why?" Derek spread his hands. "I purchase coastal properties. That island isn't exactly prime real estate." Derek laughed. "True. Then why do you want it?" For the first time, the businessman seemed slightly uncomfortable. Only for a second. Then the smile returned. "It's an investment." Logan looked at Earl. The old mechanic looked away. "Interesting. Very interesting." Derek reached into his coat pocket and removed a business card. "I can offer $50,000. The repair yard fell silent. Even Earl stopped working. $50,000 for a supposedly worthless island. Logan stared at him. The offer made no sense. Absolutely none. A man living in a pickup truck should have accepted immediately. Anyone would. $50,000 could change everything. Housing, food, medical care, a fresh start. Yet something felt wrong. Very wrong. Shadow's growl deepened. Derek glanced nervously at the dog, then back at Logan. "What do you say?" Logan folded the business card once, then handed it back. No, the answer surprised Derek. It surprised Earl, too. Maybe it even surprised Logan. The businessman blinked. "I'm not sure you understand the amount." "I understand. You could use the money." Logan met his eyes. "Probably." "Then why refuse?" For several seconds, neither man spoke. The harbor wind pushed mist across the yard. The world seemed strangely still. Finally, Logan shrugged. "Because I haven't even seen the island." Derek's expression hardened. Only slightly. But enough. For the first time, the polished businessman disappeared. Something colder surfaced beneath. Something impatient. Then it vanished again. The smile returned. "Think about it." "I already did." Derek nodded once. He turned and walked back toward the SUV. Before climbing inside, he looked over his shoulder. Some things are worth more trouble than they're worth. Then he drove away. The vehicle disappeared toward town. Earl watched it leave. "So." Logan crossed his arms. "So." The old mechanic wiped his hands on a rag. "That's the first time I've ever seen somebody offer 50 grand for a pile of rocks. You think he's lying? I think wealthy men don't spend money without a reason." Neither spoke for a while. The answer was obvious. Derek Holloway wanted something. The question was what? That evening, Logan sat alone near the harbor, watching the sun sink behind distant clouds. The map rested on his lap. Shadow lay beside him. Fishing boats drifted slowly toward shore. Their lights reflected across the darkening water. Logan unfolded the map again. This time he noticed something new. A tiny mark near the island's edge. Almost invisible. A symbol. Not a lighthouse, not a navigation marker. Something else. He leaned closer. The ink had faded badly. Whatever it represented had been intentionally noted. By Walter Grayson. A cold breeze swept across the harbor. Shadow suddenly lifted his head. His eyes focused on something across the street. Logan followed his gaze. A black SUV sat parked in the shadows, motionless, watching. The same SUV, Derek Holloway's. Several seconds passed. Then the vehicle slowly pulled away, disappearing into the growing darkness. Logan stared after it. The uneasy feeling returned, stronger this time. The island, the map, the note, the strange offer, the surveillance. None of it fit together. Yet. But deep down, he knew one thing. Derek Holloway wasn't interested in buying land. He was interested in something on that island. Something important enough to spend $50,000 before Logan had even set foot there. Beside him, Shadow rose and stood facing the ocean. The German Shepherd stared into the darkness beyond the harbor, toward the distant waters where Gull Rock Island waited, toward whatever Walter Grayson had spent years protecting, and toward a mystery that was becoming harder to ignore with every passing day. For the first time since receiving the inheritance, Logan stopped wondering whether he should visit the island. Now he was wondering who else might already know what was hidden there. The answer wasn't waiting in Blackstone Point. It was waiting 20 miles offshore, beyond the fishing lanes, beyond the lobster traps, beyond the places where ordinary people traveled. The island had been calling to him ever since he unfolded Walter Grayson's map. and now the feeling had become impossible to ignore. 3 mornings later, the harbor lay beneath a blanket of thick Atlantic fog. The world seemed unfinished. Shapes appeared and vanished inside the gray mist. Boat masts emerged like skeletal fingers. Harbor lights glowed faintly before disappearing again. The ocean itself looked endless, a vast field of pale silence. Logan stood on Pier 7 before sunrise. His old duffel bag rested at his feet. Inside were canned food, spare clothes, a flashlight, batteries, a first aid kit, and everything else he thought they might need. Not much, but enough. Shadow stood beside him. The German Shepherd was unusually alert. His ears rotated constantly, listening, watching, waiting. Logan looked toward the end of the dock. An aging fishing boat rocked gently against its lines. The vessel belonged to Earl Benson. Or rather, it had once belonged to Earl's brother. Years of salt and storms had weathered its paint. The name Seabird remained barely visible along the hull. Earl emerged from the fog, carrying 2 steaming coffee cups. "Still think this is a good idea?" Logan accepted one. "No." Earl laughed. "Good. Means you're thinking clearly." For a moment they stood together watching the gray ocean. Then Earl reached into his coat pocket. He handed Logan a ring of keys. "The engine starts easier if you curse at it." Logan smiled. "I'll remember that. Bring the boat back in one piece, no promises." Earl nodded. Then his expression became serious. "Be careful out there." Logan noticed the change immediately. "Why?" The old mechanic looked toward the water. "I knew Walter Grayson." That caught Logan's attention. "You never mentioned that." Nobody ever asked. The fog swirled around them. Earl took a long breath. He wasn't the type of man who wasted time. That's true. And he wasn't the type to leave things unfinished. Logan frowned. "What are you trying to say?" Earl looked directly at him. "I'm saying if Grayson left you that island, there's a reason." The mechanic hesitated, then added quietly, "And if Derek Holloway wants it that badly, there's probably a reason for that too." The words lingered between them. Neither man spoke for several seconds. Finally, Earl stepped back. "Good luck, Logan." Then he disappeared into the fog, leaving Logan alone with the ocean and whatever waited beyond it. The Seabird's engine protested loudly before finally coming to life. Black smoke drifted briefly across the harbor. Shadow climbed aboard first. The dog immediately moved to the bow and sat facing open water, as if he already knew where they were going. Logan untied the lines. The boat drifted away from the dock, slowly, quietly, almost reluctantly. Blackstone Point faded behind them. The harbor disappeared. Then the shoreline vanished completely. Soon there was nothing left except fog. Hours passed. The Atlantic stretched endlessly in every direction. Gray water, gray sky, gray mist. At times, Logan felt as if they were floating through another world, a world untouched by roads, cities, or people. The isolation felt strangely familiar. Military operations often began this way. Long periods of silence, uncertainty, waiting. Shadow remained vigilant. The dog rarely rested. Instead, he watched the horizon constantly, occasionally lifting his nose into the wind, testing scents impossible for humans to detect. Around midday, the fog thickened. Visibility dropped dramatically. The boat's small compass became their most reliable guide. Logan checked the map repeatedly. The island should have been nearby. Very nearby. Yet nothing appeared. Only endless gray. Then Shadow stood abruptly. Every muscle tightened. The German Shepherd stared ahead. A low rumble escaped his throat, not a growl. A warning. Logan immediately looked forward. At first he saw nothing. Then a shape emerged. Dark. Massive. Silent. A shadow rising from the ocean itself. The island. Gull Rock. It appeared gradually as the fog parted around it. Jagged cliffs climbed from the sea like the spine of some ancient creature. Dark stone glistened with moisture. White gulls circled overhead. The island looked exactly like what everyone in town had described. A pile of rocks. Lonely. Worthless. Forgotten. Yet as Logan guided the boat closer, that impression began to change. Because someone had been here recently. He saw it immediately. A section of dock showed signs of repair. New boards among old ones. Fresh rope tied around rusted mooring posts. Small details, but unmistakable. The island wasn't abandoned, at least not completely. The realization tightened something inside him. Shadow noticed too. The dog's posture changed instantly. Focused, alert, professional, the same posture he adopted before entering dangerous territory overseas. Logan secured the boat, then stepped onto the island. The rock beneath his boots felt solid, cold, ancient. Ocean waves crashed against distant cliffs. The sound echoed through the fog, creating an eerie rhythm that followed them everywhere. Together they climbed a narrow path winding upward. Grass bent beneath the wind. Seabirds scattered overhead. The higher they climbed, the more isolated the island felt. The mainland was gone, hidden completely by mist. It was as though Blackstone Point no longer existed. Only the island remained, and whatever secrets it carried. Near the summit, they finally saw the cabin. Logan stopped. The structure stood alone on a rocky plateau overlooking the ocean. Weathered cedar walls, stone foundation, metal roof, small windows facing the sea. Exactly the kind of place a retired SEAL commander might choose for solitude. Yet something felt wrong. Or perhaps right. The cabin wasn't falling apart. It should have been. Years of storms should have destroyed it. Instead, it appeared maintained, cared for. The front steps looked recently repaired. The rain gutters were intact. One window had been replaced not long ago. Logan exchanged a glance with Shadow. The dog already knew. Someone had been here. Recently. The front door creaked open easily. Too easily. Inside, the air smelled of cedar, salt, and dust. Yet surprisingly little dust. A wooden table sat near a stone fireplace. Books lined shelves along one wall. Fishing gear hung neatly from hooks. Everything appeared frozen in time, as if Walter Grayson had simply stepped outside and never returned. Logan moved slowly through the cabin, observing details. Years of military training had made careful observation second nature. Nothing seemed disturbed, nothing stolen, nothing broken. Then he noticed something strange. A mug sat beside the sink, not ancient, not forgotten, clean, recently washed. His pulse quickened. Someone had absolutely been here. The question was when. Shadow began sniffing throughout the cabin, methodical, thorough. Then the dog suddenly stopped. His ears rose, his eyes fixed on the rear window. Logan immediately turned. Outside stood a line of rocky cliffs overlooking the ocean. Nothing moved, nothing visible. Yet Shadow continued staring. Long after any normal dog would have lost interest. The feeling returned, that uncomfortable feeling of being watched. The afternoon passed as Logan explored. He found old maps, weather journals, navigation records. Most belonged to Walter Grayson. Some dated back decades. None explained why the commander had left him the island. As evening approached, fog rolled in again, thicker than before. The ocean disappeared completely. Darkness arrived early. Logan lit a lantern inside the cabin. Golden light filled the room. Outside, the wind strengthened. The island seemed smaller at night, more isolated, more vulnerable. Shadow refused to settle down. The German Shepherd paced between the front door and rear window repeatedly, listening, watching, waiting. Hours passed. The storm continued building offshore. Around midnight, Logan woke suddenly. A sound had disturbed him. At first he thought it was thunder. Then he heard it again. Metal. A faint metallic clang. Distant, rhythmic. Somewhere outside. Shadow was already awake, standing beside the door, every hair along his back raised. The dog stared toward the cliffs. The sound came again. Clang, 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 almost hidden beneath the wind. Logan grabbed the lantern. He stepped onto the porch. The night swallowed everything beyond a few yards. Fog drifted across the island like smoke. The ocean roared below. Then he saw it. Far in the distance, near the cliffs. A brief flash of light. Gone almost instantly. Then darkness again. Logan froze. The light hadn't come from the sea. It had come from the island. Someone else was here, and whoever they were, they didn't want to be seen. Beside him, Shadow stared into the darkness, silent, focused, ready. And for the first time since arriving, Logan realized the island wasn't simply hiding a secret. It might already have someone guarding it. The fog swallowed the brief flash of light almost immediately. 1 second it was there. The next, darkness reclaimed the cliffs. Logan stood motionless on the cabin porch. The lantern trembled slightly in his hand as the wind pushed across the island. Beside him, Shadow remained fixed on the same spot. Alert, silent, watching. The German Shepherd's posture told Logan everything he needed to know. The dog had seen it too. "What do you think, partner?" Logan whispered. Shadow didn't move. Far below, waves exploded against the rocks. The sound echoed through the darkness like distant artillery. For a brief moment, an old memory surfaced. A mountain ridge, a night operation, a flash of movement in the dark. The feeling of danger before danger revealed itself. Logan immediately forced the memory away. He wasn't overseas anymore. He was on an island. A lonely island. At least that's what everyone believed. Eventually, the light failed to return. The storm moved farther offshore. The wind weakened. Reluctantly, Logan stepped back inside. He secured the door and extinguished the lantern. But sleep never truly came. Several times during the night, he woke to find Shadow sitting near the window, watching, waiting, listening, as if the dog expected something to emerge from the darkness. Dawn arrived slowly. The fog remained. Gray light filtered through the cabin windows. Logan brewed coffee on the old stove while Shadow paced near the door. The dog was restless. More restless than Logan had seen in years. "You've been trying to tell me something since we got here." Shadow immediately moved toward the door, then looked back, waiting. Logan smiled faintly. "All right." The dog was already halfway outside. The morning air smelled of salt and wet stone. Fog drifted across the island in long, pale ribbons. Visibility remained limited. Yet Shadow seemed completely certain where he was going. The German Shepherd moved quickly across the rocky terrain behind the cabin. His nose stayed low. Tracking, following something. Logan grabbed his backpack and followed. The route led away from the shoreline, away from the dock, away from everything that seemed obvious. Instead, Shadow guided him toward the northern side of the island where steep cliffs overlooked the Atlantic. The terrain grew rougher. Jagged rocks protruded from patches of grass. Wind twisted through narrow crevices. Several times Logan nearly lost sight of the dog in the fog, yet Shadow never hesitated. He was following a scent, and it was fresh. Very fresh. Nearly 20 minutes later, the dog suddenly stopped. His head lowered. His ears rotated forward. Logan stepped beside him. There, pressed into a patch of damp earth between two rocks, was a boot print. A human boot print. Recent. The edges remained sharp. Rain had not yet softened it. Someone had walked here recently. Very recently. Logan crouched. Years of training immediately took over. Size 11. Heavy sole pattern. Commercial work boot. Not military. Not old. Days old at most. Maybe even newer. A second print appeared several feet away. Then another. A trail. Shadow looked at Logan. The expression almost seemed impatient, as though the dog couldn't understand why humans required so much evidence. Good catch, Logan said quietly. The German shepherd's tail flicked once. Together they followed the trail. The prints wound along the cliffside, at times disappearing among the rocks before reappearing again. Whoever had been here knew the island well. The route avoided open ground, avoided obvious paths, avoided visibility. The realization tightened Logan's jaw. People didn't move like this unless they wanted to remain unseen. Eventually, the trail ended near a cluster of dense brush growing against a rock wall. At first glance, there appeared to be nothing there. Just vegetation, stone, fog. Then Shadow pushed forward. Branches snapped, leaves shifted, and something emerged. A structure, hidden almost completely from view. Logan stared. It was a shed. Small, weathered, partially built into the rock itself. From a distance it blended perfectly with the island. No wonder he hadn't noticed it before. The roof was covered with moss. The walls had faded into the surrounding landscape. Someone had intentionally concealed it. Shadow immediately approached the door. His nose worked rapidly. The scent was strong here. Very strong. Logan examined the structure carefully. Unlike the cabin, the shed wasn't old enough to be forgotten. Someone had maintained it. Recently. The metal hinges showed little corrosion. The lock remained functional. Fresh scratches marked the doorframe. Signs of regular use. His pulse quickened. Walter Grayson had left him an island. But Grayson had also left him a mystery, and Shadow was leading him directly toward it. Logan tried the handle. Locked. The door didn't budge. For a moment he considered forcing it. Then he remembered the ring of keys Monica had included with the inheritance papers. They were still inside his backpack. He removed them now. 5 keys, different sizes, different shapes. One by one he tested them. The first failed. The second failed. The third slid smoothly into the lock. A metallic click echoed softly through the fog. Shadow immediately stepped closer. Ready. Waiting. Logan opened the door. Cold air drifted outward. The interior was dark. Dust floated through thin shafts of light. At first glance, the shed appeared ordinary. Old tools lined the walls. Coiled rope hung from hooks. Weather equipment occupied shelves. Nothing remarkable. Nothing valuable. Yet something felt wrong. The space was too organized. Too deliberate. Walter Grayson had been many things. Careless wasn't one of them. Shadow entered first. The German shepherd moved slowly around the room, sniffing, investigating. Then he stopped. A low whine escaped his throat. Logan turned. The dog stood beside a rusted metal platform occupying the center of the floor. It looked heavy, industrial, completely out of place. Shadow pawed at it. Once, twice, then again. The message was obvious. Look here. Logan knelt beside the platform. The metal surface was covered with dust. But beneath the dust he noticed scrape marks. Recent scrape marks. The platform had been moved. Not long ago. His heartbeat accelerated. Together he and Shadow began clearing debris. After several minutes, Logan located a recessed handle hidden along one edge. He pulled. The platform shifted. Slowly, he pulled harder. Metal groaned. Dust exploded into the air. The structure slid several inches, then several more, and finally revealed what had been hidden beneath. A circular steel hatch. Logan froze. The hatch wasn't civilian. Everything about it screamed military. Heavy construction, reinforced hinges, government design. The surface was scarred by decades of exposure, yet one detail remained visible, a faded emblem, barely recognizable. Logan brushed away dirt with his sleeve. The symbol emerged, an eagle, an anchor, a shield, and beneath it, weathered letters still clinging to the steel. U.S. Naval Intelligence. The world seemed to stop. Even the wind outside felt distant. Logan stared at the hatch, then at Shadow. The German shepherd sat beside it quietly, almost proudly, as if he had finally found what Walter Grayson wanted them to discover: a forgotten island, a hidden shed, a military hatch buried beneath the rock. Suddenly, Derek Holloway's offer made much more sense. And for the first time, Logan realized this wasn't about land. It wasn't about real estate, and it certainly wasn't about money. Somewhere beneath his feet, hidden inside the island itself, lay something powerful enough to remain secret for decades. Something valuable enough that someone still wanted it. And now, thanks to Shadow, they had found the entrance. For several long seconds, neither Logan nor the German shepherd moved. The steel hatch sat beneath the shifted platform like a doorway to another world. Fog drifted through the open shed doorway. The distant crash of waves echoed against the cliffs. Everything else seemed to disappear. Logan stared at the faded government emblem. U.S. Naval Intelligence. The words felt impossible. What was a military hatch doing beneath a forgotten island 20 miles from civilization? More importantly, why had Walter Grayson hidden it? Shadow remained seated beside the hatch, calm, focused. His ears twitched occasionally as he listened to sounds invisible to human senses. The dog had led Logan here. Now both of them were standing at the edge of something much bigger than either expected. Logan brushed away more dirt. Additional markings appeared. Most had faded beyond recognition. One remained partially readable. Site 14 authorized access only. His pulse quickened. This wasn't some abandoned storage room. It had been part of something organized, official, important. He reached for the handle, then stopped. Years of military experience whispered a warning. Never rush into the unknown. He stood slowly. Let's do this the smart way. Shadow rose immediately. The dog followed Logan back toward the cabin. The fog was beginning to thin. Sunlight occasionally pierced the gray clouds overhead. For the first time since arriving, parts of the island became visible that had previously been hidden. The cliffs stretched farther than Logan realized. Rock formations jutted from the sea like ancient fortresses. Gulls wheeled overhead. The Atlantic extended endlessly in every direction. Beautiful, lonely, dangerous. Back inside the cabin, Logan gathered supplies, flashlights, extra batteries, rope, a first aid kit, water, anything useful. Military habits died hard, especially when entering places that had remained sealed for decades. An hour later, he returned to the shed. The hatch waited exactly where he'd left it. Silent. Patient. Shadow sat beside it. Guarding. Logan grabbed the handle. The steel felt cold. Very cold. He pulled. Nothing happened. The hatch remained sealed. He pulled harder. Still nothing. Years of corrosion had locked it firmly in place. Logan examined the hinges, then the edges. Finally, He noticed a small locking wheel recessed beside the handle. Of course, military engineering. Built to survive. Built to last. Built to keep people out. After several minutes of effort, the wheel finally moved. Metal groaned. Dust fell. The sound echoed strangely beneath the island. Shadow immediately stepped closer. The German shepherd's attention sharpened. He sensed the change. Logan took a breath, then pulled again. This time the hatch moved. Slowly. Reluctantly. A deep metallic groan rolled through the shed. The opening widened. Cold air rushed upward. Not ordinary air. Air untouched by sunlight. Untouched by weather. Untouched by the outside world. The smell was strange. Metal, stone, salt water, and something else. Age. Decades of it. Logan aimed his flashlight into the darkness. The beam disappeared downward. A ladder emerged from the shadows. Steel rungs descending deep beneath the island. Much deeper than he expected. Shadow peered into the opening, then looked at Logan. Waiting. Ready. Together, they began the descent. The ladder seemed endless. The temperature dropped with every rung. Soon the sounds of the surface vanished completely. No wind, no gulls, no ocean. Only silence. Their flashlight beams bounced across concrete walls, not natural stone, engineered construction. The deeper they went, the clearer the truth became. Someone had spent enormous resources building this place. Finally, Logan's boots touched solid ground. A tunnel stretched ahead, wide enough for equipment. Concrete walls lined both sides. Emergency lighting fixtures remained attached to the ceiling, though none still worked. The entire facility felt frozen in time. Shadow moved carefully. His nose worked constantly, tracking scents, searching. Yet unlike the island above, the air here carried no signs of recent human presence. Only age, dust, history. Logan advanced slowly. The tunnel continued for nearly 100 yards. Then it opened, and what lay beyond stopped him cold. The chamber was enormous, far larger than anything he imagined. His flashlight beam swept across the darkness. Concrete platforms, metal catwalks, rows of equipment, communication arrays, operations consoles, storage lockers, everything preserved beneath the island. An entire military operations center hidden inside solid rock. The scale was breathtaking. For several moments, Logan simply stared. The facility felt like a ghost frozen in place, abandoned but untouched, silent but somehow alive. Shadow stepped ahead. His nails clicked softly against the concrete floor. The sound echoed through the cavernous chamber. Logan followed. Everywhere he looked, new details emerged. Maps still mounted on walls. Electronic equipment preserved beneath protective covers. Stacks of sealed containers. Metal filing cabinets. Storage crates stamped with military markings. The deeper he explored, the more questions appeared. What exactly had happened here? And why was it hidden beneath an island nobody cared about? A large operations room occupied the center of the complex. Banks of monitors faced a massive wall map. Most screens were dead, covered in dust. Yet the room felt strangely organized, as though people had expected to return someday. Shadow suddenly stopped. The dog stared toward a row of cabinets along the far wall. Logan approached. Each cabinet carried identification labels. Most had faded. One remained readable. Command Authorization Archive. The words sent a chill through him. He opened the first drawer. Inside rested dozens of files, military reports, operations records, personnel documents, everything meticulously preserved. His flashlight beam moved across names, dates, locations, classified designations. Then he froze. One folder stood apart from the others. Newer, cleaner. Its label remained perfectly readable. Commander Walter Grayson. For several seconds, Logan couldn't move. The folder shouldn't have existed. Grayson died only months ago. Yet here it was, waiting, almost as if the commander knew someone would eventually find it. Perhaps he had. Shadow sat beside the cabinet, watching. The same way he had watched Logan through nightmares, panic attacks, and years of loneliness. Always there, always steady. Logan carefully opened the folder. Inside were photographs, reports, maps, handwritten notes, and a sealed envelope. His name appeared on the front. Logan Mercer. The sight hit him harder than expected. Walter Grayson hadn't simply left him an island. He had left him this, whatever this was. The envelope trembled slightly in Logan's hand. He opened it. A single sheet of paper rested inside. The handwriting was unmistakable. If you're reading this, Shadow did exactly what I hoped he would. Logan stared, then continued. There are truths buried here that powerful people wanted forgotten. If they remain hidden, good men will continue to be remembered as failures and traitors. If they are revealed, history changes. His heartbeat accelerated. The words continued. You will find records connected to an operation erased from public memory. An operation that destroyed lives, careers, and families, including yours. Logan froze. The flashlight suddenly felt heavier. Including yours. The words echoed through his mind. His. Not someone else's. His. A memory surfaced. A deployment years ago. An operation gone wrong. Names, faces, the deaths that haunted his sleep, the guilt he carried every day. Logan looked down at the letter again. One final sentence remained. The truth begins in Archive Room 3. Trust Shadow. He'll know where to go next. Silence settled over the chamber. Deep, ancient, unbroken. The island above no longer felt mysterious. Now it felt intentional. Every step, every clue, every note. Walter Grayson had planned this long before his death, and whatever waited inside Archive Room 3 wasn't merely military history. It was personal. Very personal. Beside him, Shadow stood. The German Shepherd turned toward a dark corridor extending deeper into the facility. Then he looked back at Logan, waiting, as if he already knew where the truth was hiding. And somewhere beyond that corridor, buried beneath decades of secrecy, lay the first answers to a mystery powerful enough to reshape everything Logan believed about his past. The corridor stretched into darkness. Concrete walls swallowed the beam of Logan's flashlight. Every step echoed through the underground facility. Shadow moved ahead of him, confident and steady. The German Shepherd never hesitated, never looked back. It was almost as if he had accepted Walter Grayson's final instruction long before Logan ever read it. Trust Shadow. He'll know where to go next. The words lingered in Logan's mind. The deeper they moved into the facility, the colder the air became. Dust covered the floor in an undisturbed layer. No recent footprints, no signs of visitors. Whoever had built this place had left it untouched for years, perhaps decades. At the end of the corridor stood a reinforced steel door. A faded plaque hung beside it. Archive Room 3. Logan stopped. His pulse quickened. This was it. The place Grayson had mentioned. The place where the truth supposedly began. Shadow sat beside the door, waiting. Logan examined the lock. Unlike most of the facility, it still appeared functional. A small keypad sat beside the handle. Dead. Powerless. But beneath it was something simpler. A key cylinder. Old-fashioned. Mechanical. Reliable. The kind of backup system military engineers loved. Logan returned to the ring of keys Yuam was from the inheritance. There were only 2 he hadn't used yet. The first didn't fit. The second slid smoothly into place. A loud metallic click echoed through the hallway. The lock released. For several seconds, Logan simply stood there. Then he pushed the door open. The hinges groaned. A wave of stale air rolled outward. The room beyond remained perfectly preserved. Rows of filing cabinets lined the walls. Storage shelves held sealed boxes. Computer terminals sat dormant beneath protective covers. In the center of the room stood a large projection screen, and beside it rested a portable video station. Logan slowly approached. A note sat on top, written in Walter Grayson's familiar handwriting. "If you've made it this far, you're ready." The message was short, direct. Exactly the way Grayson always communicated. Beneath the note rested several videotapes, each labeled carefully. Operation Iron Harbor, personnel records, financial transfers, witness statements. Then Logan saw another tape. His breath caught. Mercer. The label carried his last name. Nothing else. Just Mercer. Shadow moved closer. The dog sensed the change immediately. Logan stared at the tape for a long time. Finally, he inserted it into the machine. To his surprise, emergency power still existed somewhere in the facility. The screen flickered. Static appeared, then stabilized. A face emerged. Walter Grayson, older than Logan remembered. His hair completely gray. His expression serious. Tired, but determined. Logan. The commander's voice echoed softly through the room. "If you're seeing this, it means Shadow succeeded." A faint smile touched Grayson's face. "I always trusted that dog more than most people." Despite everything, Logan found himself smiling too. Then Grayson's expression darkened. "What you're about to learn won't be easy." The screen shifted. Photographs appeared. Military personnel, mission briefings, maps, satellite images. This facility was built to preserve evidence connected to Operation Iron Harbor. Logan frowned. The name sounded vaguely familiar, but distant, buried somewhere in memory. Grayson continued. Officially, Iron Harbor was classified as a failed intelligence operation that resulted in the deaths of several American servicemen. New photographs appeared. Young soldiers, military vehicles, a coastal facility. The image changed again. Then Logan froze. One of the faces was familiar. Very familiar. A man smiling beside a helicopter. Broad shoulders. Dark hair. Confident eyes. Logan whispered the name before he realized it. Michael. Michael Reyes, his former team leader. The man whose death had haunted him for years. The man Logan blamed himself for losing. The image remained on screen. Grayson continued speaking. "You were told Michael Reyes died because of operational mistakes." Logan's jaw tightened. That was exactly what he'd been told. Exactly what he'd believed. Exactly what had followed him through every sleepless night since. The screen changed again. Now official reports appeared. Highlighted sections, redacted paragraphs, classified stamps. Grayson looked directly into the camera. Those reports were false. The words hit like a hammer. Logan stopped breathing. For several seconds, he simply stared. False. The room seemed to tilt around him. No. The word escaped before he could stop it. No. Shadow immediately moved closer. The dog pressed against his leg, grounding him, keeping him present, keeping him here. Not in the past. Grayson continued. Operation Iron Harbor wasn't destroyed by mistakes. More documents appeared. Financial records, corporate contracts, government signatures. Certain defense contractors knowingly supplied defective surveillance systems. The screen displayed evidence, technical reports, inspection failures, ignored warnings. The failures were discovered before deployment. Logan felt sick. A cold weight settled inside his chest. Grayson kept talking. They were ignored because exposing them would have cost millions. Photographs continued appearing. Executives, government meetings, transfer records. Every image seemed to reveal another layer of deception. The operation proceeded anyway. Logan clenched his fists. His knuckles turned white. Because he remembered. He remembered the confusion, the communication failures, the equipment problems, the chaos. He remembered Michael Reyes and the others. Good men. Capable men. Men who never came home. All these years, he had believed they died because something went wrong in the field. Now he was learning something far worse. Something had gone wrong long before they ever deployed. The screen flickered again. Another photograph appeared. This one struck even harder. A younger Walter Grayson stood beside Michael Reyes, beside several others, all smiling, all alive. The commander looked older now, sad, haunted. I spent years trying to expose the truth. Grayson's voice softened. No one listened. The screen showed legal documents, investigations, dismissals, closed cases, destroyed careers. They buried the evidence. The room fell silent for a moment. Then Grayson leaned forward. His eyes seemed fixed directly on Logan. They buried the truth. Logan felt anger rising. Not sudden anger, not explosive anger. Something deeper, colder. The kind that grows slowly. The kind that changes people. Shadow rested his head against Logan's knee. The dog sensed everything. The tension, the grief, the memories returning. Logan placed a hand on the shepherd's neck. The familiar contact steadied him. The video continued. One man helped conceal what happened. A photograph appeared. A businessman standing beside military contractors. The image was old, at least 20 years old. Logan studied it carefully. The face looked familiar. Then realization struck. Not Derek Holloway. Someone older. Someone who looked remarkably like him. His father. The resemblance was undeniable. The same jaw, the same eyes, the same smile. Grayson spoke carefully. Many of the people responsible are gone now. The image remained, but their influence survived. Logan stared at the photograph. His thoughts immediately returned to the marina. The offer. The surveillance. The desperate attempt to buy the island. Suddenly, it all made sense. Derek Holloway wasn't interested in property. He was interested in this. The evidence. The truth. The secrets hidden beneath the island. The screen finally faded to black. The room fell silent. Only the hum of old machinery remained. Logan sat motionless. The weight of everything pressed down on him. For years he had carried guilt. For years he had blamed himself. For years he had replayed those memories over and over. Now the foundation beneath those memories had cracked. What if Michael Reyes hadn't died because of mistakes? What if none of them had? What if the guilt Logan carried wasn't his to bear? The possibility felt overwhelming, dangerous, liberating, terrifying. Shadow climbed onto the bench beside him. The dog leaned gently against his shoulder. Logan closed his eyes. For a long time, neither moved. Far above them, waves crashed against the island. The ocean continued its endless rhythm. Unaware that deep beneath the rock, one man's understanding of his entire life had just changed forever. When Logan finally opened his eyes again, he looked toward the rows of files surrounding them. Thousands of pages, decades of evidence, enough to expose powerful people, enough to rewrite history, enough to make enemies. The realization settled heavily inside him. Walter Grayson hadn't left him an inheritance. He had left him a responsibility, and somewhere beyond the island, people who wanted these secrets buried forever still existed. People who would do anything to keep the truth hidden. The realization followed Logan throughout the rest of the day. He spent hours inside the underground facility, carefully examining files, photographs, and archived reports. Every discovery made the picture clearer. Operation Iron Harbor had never been a simple military failure. It had been a cover-up, a costly one. And Walter Grayson had dedicated the final years of his life to preserving evidence that powerful people wanted erased. By late afternoon, Logan carried several of the most important files back to the cabin. He didn't trust leaving everything underground. Not anymore. The sky outside had changed. Dark clouds gathered over the Atlantic. The ocean had taken on a deep steel gray color. A storm was building. Shadow sat near the cabin window watching the water. The dog's attention never wandered. Every few minutes, his ears shifted toward the shoreline. Listening, monitoring, the same way he once watched village roads overseas, the same way he watched doorways before entering dangerous buildings. Logan recognized the behavior immediately. Shadow sensed something. As evening approached, the island grew unnaturally quiet. Even the gulls disappeared. The wind strengthened. Waves crashed harder against the cliffs. Logan stood outside the cabin studying the horizon through binoculars he had found inside Grayson's storage locker. At first he saw nothing, only rough water and gathering weather. Then a shape appeared. Small, dark, moving through the waves. A boat. His stomach tightened. Nobody should have been approaching the island, especially not in weather like this. He focused the binoculars. The vessel wasn't a fishing boat. Too fast, too modern. It cut directly through the rough water without hesitation, and it was heading straight toward Gull Rock Island. Not searching, not exploring, heading directly toward it, as if the people aboard already knew where they were going. Shadow stepped beside him. The German shepherd stared toward the ocean. A low growl rumbled in his chest. "Yeah," Logan muttered. "I see it too." The boat disappeared briefly behind waves, then reappeared closer. Much closer. Logan returned inside the cabin. His mind was already shifting into a familiar rhythm. Assessment. Preparation. Planning. Years might have passed since his last operation, but training never truly disappeared. He spread a map of the island across the table. The terrain suddenly looked different. Not like scenery, like defensive ground. Cliffs, narrow paths, blind corners, observation points, natural choke points. He knew exactly how an approaching group would move, because he would have moved the same way. Shadow stood near the door, waiting, focused. The dog understood the change. The mission mindset had returned. Night fell quickly. Rain began shortly after sunset. The first drops struck the roof. Then came more. Soon the entire island was wrapped in wind and rain. The approaching boat disappeared into darkness. But Logan knew it was still out there. Somewhere beyond the storm. Around midnight, Shadow suddenly lifted his head, instantly, without warning. The dog moved to the window. His posture changed, alert, rigid, every muscle ready. Logan grabbed the binoculars. Nothing. Only darkness. Then Shadow growled. Not loudly, just enough. A warning. Logan extinguished the lantern immediately. The cabin fell into darkness. Now he saw it. A faint light. Moving near the shoreline. Someone had landed. His pulse slowed rather than accelerated. That always happened. Fear came first. Then training took over. He counted. One light, then another, then a third. Multiple people, moving carefully, trying not to be seen, which meant they weren't tourists, or researchers, or lost fishermen. They knew exactly what they were doing. Logan quietly retrieved his flashlight and radio equipment. Shadow remained at the window, watching every movement below. The rain intensified. Visibility worsened. Yet the lights continued climbing the island, steadily, purposefully, toward the cabin, toward the secret, toward the truth. Logan moved silently through the darkness. He covered windows, secured documents, relocated critical evidence into waterproof bags. The most important files disappeared beneath loose floorboards inside the cabin. If someone searched quickly, they wouldn't find them. Years ago, he had learned a simple rule. Never protect the obvious thing. Protect the important thing. Outside, the lights moved closer. Now he could occasionally hear voices carried by the wind. Not the words, only the sounds, enough to confirm his suspicion. Several men, working together. Shadow suddenly shifted toward the rear of the cabin. Logan followed. The dog wasn't focused on the approaching group anymore. He was focused on something else, something behind them. Logan peered through a narrow gap. A second team, moving along the cliffs, trying to circle around. His jaw tightened. Whoever these people were, they knew what they were doing. This wasn't a random search. It was a coordinated operation. Then lightning flashed across the ocean. For a split second, the island lit up, and Logan saw a familiar figure among the men approaching the cabin. Derek Holloway. The developer stood near the front of the group wearing a rain jacket, his face illuminated briefly by lightning. Then darkness returned. Everything suddenly made sense. The offer, the surveillance, the urgency. Derek knew exactly what was hidden beneath the island, and now he had come to claim it. Shadow's growl deepened. Logan rested a hand on the dog's shoulder. Easy. The German Shepherd immediately settled. Ready, waiting for instruction. Logan looked around the dark cabin. The old loneliness was gone. The uncertainty was gone. In their place stood something he hadn't felt in years. Purpose. Walter Grayson had trusted him for a reason. Those files represented the truth. The names of good men. The memories of people who never received justice. And Logan wasn't about to hand them over. Not to Derek Holloway. Not to anyone. Outside, flashlights moved through the storm. The hunters had arrived, but they were about to discover something important. Gull Rock Island wasn't empty, and the homeless veteran they had underestimated wasn't running anymore. He was standing his ground. Beside him, Shadow stared into the darkness. The aging military dog's eyes reflected a flash of lightning. Together they watched the storm close around the island and prepared for whatever came next. Rain hammered the cabin roof. Wind howled across the cliffs. Lightning flashed over the Atlantic, turning the island white for brief, ghostly moments before darkness swallowed everything again. Logan crouched beside the rear window. Shadow remained motionless next to him. The German Shepherd's breathing was steady, controlled, professional, the same way it had been during deployments years ago. Outside, flashlights moved through the storm. 3 lights near the front path, 2 more near the cliffs. The men were spreading out, searching. Logan knew exactly what that meant. They weren't here to talk. They were here to find something. The files, the evidence, the truth buried beneath the island. He checked his watch. Midnight. The storm was getting worse. Good. Bad weather complicated everything, especially for people unfamiliar with the terrain. But Logan had spent the last several days studying the island. Every trail, every ridge, every blind corner. The hunters believed they had the advantage. They were wrong. Shadow suddenly lifted his head. A faint sound drifted through the rain. Footsteps. Close. Very close. The first group had reached the cabin. A flashlight beam swept across the front porch. Then another. Logan remained perfectly still. The beam passed across the window, paused, then moved away. Outside, someone tested the front door. The handle rattled. Once. Twice. A voice followed, muffled by rain. "Check around back." Logan looked at Shadow. The dog immediately understood. Together they slipped through the rear exit. The storm concealed their movement. Rain drenched them instantly. The cold barely registered. They moved along the cliffside trail. Silent. Invisible. Below them, waves exploded against the rocks. The ocean sounded like distant artillery. The comparison wasn't comforting. Memories threatened to surface. Old battlefields. Old losses. Old ghosts. Logan pushed them away. Focus now. Remember later. The island narrowed near the northern cliffs. Sharp drops fell directly into the sea. Natural bottlenecks. Natural barriers. Perfect defensive terrain. Lightning flashed again. This time, Logan saw the second team. 2 men moving toward the hidden shed. Toward the hatch. Toward the underground facility. His jaw tightened. They knew. Somehow they already knew where to look. Shadow growled softly. Logan nodded. "I know." The dog moved ahead, tracking, watching. The men continued toward the shed. Neither noticed they were being observed. Rain reduced visibility. Wind distorted sound. Nature itself seemed to be helping. One of the men reached the shed first. He opened the door. A flashlight beam disappeared inside. The second man followed. Logan waited, counted, measured, then quietly approached. Years of SEAL training returned effortlessly. Movement, timing, observation. The shed door remained partially open. The men inside focused entirely on the hatch. Neither looked behind them. Neither expected company. Logan stepped forward. The floor creaked. One man spun around. Surprised. The encounter lasted only seconds. No dramatic confrontation. No fight. Only confusion. Shock. And a realization that they had lost the advantage. The men retreated quickly into the storm, disappearing back toward the shoreline, toward the others. Logan didn't pursue. The objective wasn't confrontation. The objective was protection. Protection of the evidence. Protection of the truth. Protection of Shadow. The last part mattered most, because Shadow wasn't young anymore. The years showed. A little gray around the muzzle, slight stiffness after long days. The dog would never admit weakness, but Logan noticed. He always noticed. The storm intensified. Thunder rolled across the ocean. Somewhere near the southern ridge, a bright flashlight suddenly appeared. Then another. The search teams were regrouping, adapting, learning. Derek Holloway was probably directing them. That thought bothered Logan more than anything. Derek wasn't acting like a businessman. He was acting like someone desperate, someone afraid, someone who knew exactly what those files contained. Shadow froze. Every muscle tightened. The dog stared toward a narrow path above the cliffs. Logan followed his gaze. A figure, moving quickly, closer than the others, much closer. The person had somehow circled around. Now they were approaching from an unexpected direction. The path was dangerous, narrow, slippery. One mistake could send someone tumbling down the rocky slope. Yet the figure kept coming. Fast, determined. Logan repositioned. The files hidden inside his waterproof bag suddenly felt much heavier. The truth Walter Grayson protected for decades now depended on what happened tonight. Rain poured into his eyes. Wind pushed against him. The figure closed the distance. Then lightning illuminated the island again. For a split second, Logan saw everything clearly. The approaching man, the steep drop beside the trail, the slick rocks, the danger. Then darkness returned. The next moments happened quickly, too quickly. A loose rock shifted beneath Logan's boot. His balance disappeared. The cliff edge rushed toward him. Instinct took over. He reached for stable ground. Found nothing. The world tilted. Then a powerful force slammed into him. Shadow. The German shepherd launched himself forward. The impact knocked Logan away from the edge. Hard. Pain exploded through his shoulder as he hit the ground. For a second he couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Couldn't understand what had happened. Then he heard it. A sharp cry. Shadow. Logan turned instantly. The dog had fallen against the rocks during the collision. Not over the cliff, but hard enough. Much too hard. The shepherd struggled to stand, then stumbled. A terrible feeling spread through Logan's chest. Not fear. Not yet. Something worse. The approaching figure vanished into the storm. Forgotten. Meaningless. Nothing mattered except the dog. Shadow! Logan dropped to his knees. Rain poured around them. Thunder rolled overhead. Shadow looked up, still alert, still trying to rise, still trying to protect him. Even now, even injured, the dog was thinking about Logan, not himself. The sight broke something inside him. For years, Shadow had been the constant, the partner, the protector. The reason Logan survived nights when PTSD felt unbearable. The reason he got out of bed. The reason he kept moving. The reason he wasn't alone. And now that same dog had just saved his life. Again. At a cost. Logan carefully examined him. No obvious bleeding. No visible wounds. But the shepherd was hurting. That much was clear. The realization struck harder than any storm. Harder than any truth hidden in the underground facility. Harder than any betrayal buried inside government files. He could lose Shadow. The thought hit with devastating force. Suddenly he wasn't standing on an island. He wasn't protecting evidence. He wasn't exposing corruption. He was simply a man kneeling in the rain beside the only family he had left. Memories flooded back. Deployments. Missions. Long nights overseas, Shadow beside him through all of it. Never leaving. Never quitting. Never failing. Tears mixed with rain. Logan didn't care. Stay with me. The words came out broken. Raw. Honest. Shadow's tail moved once. Just once. But it moved. The small gesture somehow made everything worse. Because it reminded Logan exactly how much he loved this dog, and exactly how much he stood to lose. Thunder shook the island. Far below, waves crashed against the cliffs. The storm continued. The hunters continued searching. The truth remained hidden. But none of that mattered anymore. Logan carefully lifted Shadow. The dog winced but remained silent, trusting him completely. The same way Logan had trusted him for years. Step by step, through rain and darkness, Logan carried his partner back toward the cabin, toward shelter, toward safety, toward whatever chance remained. Behind them, the storm swallowed the island. Ahead of them waited an uncertain dawn, and for the first time since arriving on Gull Rock Island, Logan wasn't thinking about secrets. He was thinking about the possibility of losing the one friend who had never abandoned him. The storm raged through the night. Rain hammered the cabin roof. Wind rattled the windows. Thunder rolled endlessly across the Atlantic. Inside the small cabin, Logan knelt beside Shadow. A lantern cast warm light across the wooden floor. The German Shepherd lay on a blanket near the fireplace, breathing, alert, but hurting. Logan had completed every examination he knew how to perform. No major bleeding, no obvious fractures. But the impact had been significant. The dog struggled whenever he tried to stand. That alone terrified Logan. Shadow had endured years of military service. Harsh terrain, explosions, extreme weather, long deployments. He was one of the toughest animals Logan had ever known. If he was struggling now, the injury was serious. Logan sat beside him, one hand resting gently on the dog's shoulder. Outside, lightning illuminated the island. Then darkness returned, again and again. Hours passed. Neither slept. The evidence hidden beneath the floorboards remained forgotten. The underground facility remained forgotten. Even Derek Holloway remained forgotten. Nothing mattered except getting Shadow through the night. Near dawn, the storm finally began to weaken. The rain softened. The wind eased. The first pale light appeared beyond the windows. Shadow lifted his head. His eyes found Logan immediately. The same eyes, the same trust, the same loyalty. Logan felt his throat tighten. "You're not leaving me." The words came out quietly, almost like a promise, or perhaps a plea. Shadow's tail moved once, just enough. By sunrise, the island seemed transformed. The storm clouds retreated toward the horizon. Sunlight broke through gaps in the sky. Golden beams stretched across the ocean. The violence of the night felt distant, almost unreal. Logan brewed coffee, then sat at the table staring at Walter Grayson's files. The weight of everything settled over him once more. The truth, the evidence, the cover-up, the names of men who had been forgotten, the names of men who deserved justice. He looked toward Shadow. The German Shepherd had finally fallen asleep. For now. The sight brought relief, but only a little. Logan opened the first archive box. Inside rested financial records, thousands of pages, government contracts, payment schedules, internal correspondence. At first glance, the documents seemed boring, meaningless. Then patterns began to emerge. Certain companies appeared repeatedly. The same names, the same signatures, the same accounts. Logan spent hours sorting through them. The deeper he looked, the clearer the picture became. Walter Grayson had been right. This wasn't merely corruption. It was organized, systematic, deliberate. Millions of dollars moved through shell companies and defense contractors. Warnings were ignored. Safety concerns were buried. Reports were altered. Careers were destroyed. Lives were lost. And someone had profited. A lot. The realization filled him with cold anger. Not the explosive anger of youth, something older, more controlled, the kind that refuses to disappear. Around noon, a satellite phone inside the facility finally changed everything. Logan had discovered it earlier but assumed it no longer worked. Now, after restoring emergency power from a backup generator, the device flickered to life. One blinking light. Nothing more. Yet it was enough. His first call went to Monica Reed. The attorney answered immediately. "Logan?" Relief filled her voice. "I've been trying to reach you for 2 days. I've been busy." That's an understatement. Logan looked at the files surrounding him. "Monica, I need you to listen carefully." The silence that followed lasted nearly 20 minutes. Logan explained everything. The facility, the archives, the evidence, Operation Iron Harbor, the cover-up. When he finished, Monica said nothing for several seconds. Then, "Are you certain?" "Completely." Another pause. Then her professional tone returned. "You need federal investigators." "I know. You need secure evidence handling. I know. And Logan, her voice softened. You're about to make some very powerful enemies. He looked toward Shadow. The dog remained asleep, peaceful for the first time in hours. I think I already have. The next 48 hours unfolded faster than anything Logan could have imagined. Monica moved immediately. Contacts were made. Federal agencies were notified. Military investigators became involved. Independent auditors began reviewing archived records. The evidence Walter Grayson preserved for decades finally started reaching people who couldn't ignore it. By the third day, news organizations began asking questions. By the fourth, national reporters arrived in Maine. And by the fifth, the story exploded. The headlines appeared everywhere. Forgotten military operation linked to decades-old cover-up. Archived evidence reveals contractor misconduct. Veterans' deaths under new investigation. The story spread like wildfire. Names once buried resurfaced. Families long denied answers suddenly received phone calls. Questions became investigations. Investigations became revelations. And revelations became national news. Logan watched much of it unfold from the island. The attention felt unreal, distant, like watching someone else's life. The most shocking discovery arrived several days later. Federal investigators uncovered records linking one family repeatedly to the original cover-up. Financial influence, political pressure, contract approvals. The name appeared again and again. Holloway, not Derek. His father, Richard Holloway. A powerful businessman who had died years earlier. A man respected publicly, celebrated publicly, but privately connected to many of the decisions that helped bury Operation Iron Harbor. The revelation stunned the country. It stunned Blackstone Point even more. Because suddenly Derek Holloway's behavior made perfect sense. The desperate offer, the surveillance, the attempts to recover the evidence. He hadn't been protecting himself. He had been protecting his family's legacy. The truth struck harder than Logan expected. Because Derek wasn't the architect of the cover-up. He was its heir. Just as Logan had inherited the island, Derek had inherited secrets. And now those secrets were surfacing. The irony wasn't lost on him. One inheritance exposed the truth. The other had spent years trying to bury it. Late one evening, Monica arrived on the island aboard a Coast Guard vessel. Federal agents accompanied her, professional, respectful, careful. They spent hours documenting evidence, cataloging records, photographing archives. Throughout the process, Logan remained beside Shadow. The dog was improving slowly, very slowly, still weak, still sore, but recovering. Every small improvement felt like a victory. As the investigators worked, Monica joined Logan outside the cabin. The sun was setting. Orange light stretched across the ocean. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Monica handed him a newspaper. The front page carried a familiar photograph. Walter Grayson. Beneath it ran a headline. Commander's decades-long fight for truth finally vindicated. Logan stared at it quietly. He was right all along. Monica nodded. Looks that way. The ocean breeze carried the scent of salt and distant rain. Far below, waves rolled against the cliffs. The island felt different now. Less like a mystery. More like a monument. A monument to truth. To sacrifice. To unfinished missions. Monica looked toward the horizon. You know this story isn't over. Logan nodded. He knew. Investigations would continue. Trials might follow. More secrets would emerge. But the hardest part was finished. The truth was no longer buried beneath the island. The truth was now above the surface. Visible. Unstoppable. And somewhere beyond the Atlantic horizon, Powerful people who had spent decades hiding from accountability were finally beginning to realize something. Walter Grayson had won, and so had the men whose names he refused to let history forget. Winter arrived early along the Maine coast. Cold winds swept across the Atlantic. Gray skies hung low above Blackstone Point. The ocean seemed quieter now, not calmer, just older, as if it had finally surrendered a secret it had guarded for decades. Months passed. Investigations continued. Government reports filled newspapers. Congressional hearings appeared on television. Former officials answered difficult questions. Families of fallen servicemen finally received information they had spent years searching for. Names once forgotten returned to public memory. Photographs appeared again. Stories were told again. Lives were honored again. And throughout it all, Logan Mercer stayed mostly out of sight. The attention never interested him. The interviews, the cameras, the headlines. None of it felt important. Not compared to one thing. Shadow. The German Shepherd had survived. But recovery was slow, painfully slow. Several veterinary specialists had examined him. The final recommendation came from a rehabilitation center several hours inland, a place designed specifically for working dogs, police canines, military dogs, search and rescue animals, dogs who had spent their lives serving others. The facility sat near a wooded valley surrounded by snow-covered hills, a quiet place, the kind of place built for healing. The first time Logan visited, he almost turned around in the parking lot, not because he was afraid of what he might find, because he was afraid of hope. Hope still made him nervous. After everything he had lost, hope often felt more dangerous than disappointment. The automatic doors opened. Warm air greeted him. Inside, sunlight streamed through large windows overlooking snow-covered fields. The scent of clean floors and fresh coffee filled the building. A receptionist smiled. "You must be Logan." He nodded. "They've been waiting for you." The words hit harder than expected. They. Not just Shadow. People. Professionals. Veterinarians. Therapists. Individuals who cared. For years, Logan had become accustomed to handling everything alone. The idea of others helping still felt unfamiliar. A therapist named Sarah guided him through the facility. Along the way, they passed several dogs, a retired bomb detection Labrador, an aging search and rescue shepherd, a police canine recovering from surgery. Each carried scars, visible or invisible, just like the people who worked with them. Eventually, Sarah stopped outside a rehabilitation room. Large windows overlooked an indoor therapy area. "Ready?" Logan swallowed, then nodded. The door opened, and there he was. Shadow. The German Shepherd stood near a therapist. His movements remained stiff, careful, but he was standing. Standing. For a moment, Logan couldn't breathe. The dog turned. Their eyes met. Everything else disappeared. The room, the staff, the months, the distance, gone. Shadow immediately recognized him. The reaction was instant. The shepherd's ears rose, his tail began moving, then faster still. The dog started forward, not running, not yet, but trying. Every step seemed determined, purposeful, as though nothing in the world mattered more than reaching his partner. Logan dropped to one knee, the way he had countless times before deployments, before missions, before long nights overseas. Shadow closed the distance, then pressed himself against Logan's chest. The impact nearly broke him. Not physically, emotionally. Years of pain, years of guilt, years of loneliness. All collapsed beneath the simple reality of that moment. His friend was alive. His partner was alive. The one soul who had never abandoned him was still here. Logan wrapped both arms around the dog. For several seconds, neither moved. The rehabilitation staff quietly looked away, giving them privacy, giving them dignity. Because some reunions deserved silence. When Logan finally stood, Sarah handed him a progress report. The news was encouraging. Shadow would never be young again, but he would recover. Slowly, steadily, with time, with patience. The words felt miraculous. That evening, Logan sat outside the facility beneath a pale winter sky. Shadow rested beside him. Snow covered the nearby hills. The world looked clean, peaceful. For the first time in many years, Logan allowed himself to imagine a future. Not survival, not endurance, a future. The thought felt strange, yet somehow right. Several weeks later, another letter arrived. Not from lawyers, not from investigators, not from journalists, from the Department of Defense. The ceremony took place in Washington. Logan almost declined. Then he remembered Walter Grayson and Michael Reyes and all the others. So he attended. The auditorium was filled with families, veterans, military officials, rows of quiet faces. The atmosphere carried the weight of history. One by one, names were read. Men whose records had finally been corrected. Men whose sacrifices had finally been acknowledged. Photographs appeared on large screens. Stories were shared. Families cried. Others smiled through tears. Healing often looked like both. Then came Walter Grayson's turn. A posthumous commendation. Recognition decades overdue. As the commander's image appeared on screen, the room rose to its feet. A standing ovation. Long, respectful, powerful. Logan found himself standing too. Shadow sat beside him. The German Shepherd wore a ceremonial service vest provided by the organizers. Several veterans nearby quietly saluted. Others wiped away tears. Because they understood. Some missions take days. Others take decades. Walter Grayson had completed his mission, even if he never lived to see it. Afterward, Monica Reed joined Logan outside the building. Snow drifted gently through the evening air. The city lights glowed beyond the streets. Neither spoke immediately. Finally, Monica smiled. So. Logan glanced toward her. So. What happens now? The question lingered. For months, everyone had asked variations of it. What would he do with the island? Sell it? Develop it? Turn it into a museum? The offers had become ridiculous. Millions of dollars, corporate proposals, historical foundations, investors. Everyone wanted a piece of Gull Rock Island. Logan looked down at Shadow. The shepherd sat calmly beside him. Older now, wiser somehow, still watching the world with those same loyal eyes. I don't know yet. Monica smiled. You do. Maybe she was right. Because deep down, Logan already suspected the answer. The island had never been about money, never about real estate, never even about the hidden facility. It had always been about people, the living, the fallen, those still searching for purpose, those still carrying invisible wounds. That realization followed him all the way back to Maine, back across the winter coastline, back toward the island, back toward the final decision waiting there, because Walter Grayson had left him more than evidence, more than secrets, more than land. He had left him a mission, and for the first time since losing everything, Logan felt ready to accept it. Spring returned to the Maine coast with slow determination. The snow melted from the hills. The harbor waters brightened. Fishing boats once again filled Blackstone Point with the sounds of engines, gulls, and early morning departures. Life moved forward, as it always did. But for Logan Mercer, the future no longer looked like something to survey. It looked like something to build. The first changes began on Gull Rock Island. They were small at first. A repaired dock, fresh paint on the cabin, new solar panels installed near the cliffs, supplies delivered by boat, construction materials stacked neatly beside the old shed. People noticed. Questions followed. Rumors spread. Some assumed Logan had finally decided to sell. Others believed a corporation had purchased the island. Neither was true. The reality was far more meaningful. One morning, Earl Benson stepped off a supply boat carrying a toolbox. He stared at the activity surrounding the cabin, then looked at Logan. "You've been busy." Logan smiled. "Need help?" Earl snorted. "That's not an answer." "No." "Good." The old mechanic grabbed his toolbox. "Because I'm helping anyway." That was how it started. One volunteer became 2, 2 became 5, 5 became 20. Retired veterans arrived. Former military handlers arrived. Carpenters, electricians, therapists, veterinarians, people who understood service, people who understood sacrifice, people who understood what happened when a mission ended, but the wounds remained. Together, they transformed the island. The underground facility became something entirely different. The old operations rooms became counseling spaces. Storage chambers became temporary lodging. Meeting rooms became classrooms. The hidden facility that once protected secrets now began helping people heal. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone, especially Logan. Throughout the process, Shadow remained nearby. His recovery continued, slowly, steadily. The old shepherd would never move quite as quickly as before, but he didn't seem to care. Every morning he walked the island, inspecting the work, greeting visitors, accepting attention from veterans who immediately understood who he was. A warrior, a survivor, a partner. One afternoon, a retired Marine knelt beside him. The man studied the gray around Shadow's muzzle, then smiled. "You carried your weight too, didn't you?" Shadow responded by placing a paw on the man's knee. The Marine laughed softly, then wiped away tears. Because some wounds recognized each other. Months later, the first families arrived. Not tourists, not reporters. Families of struggling veterans, retired military dogs, handlers searching for purpose. Men and women carrying burdens that looked invisible to everyone except those who shared them. The island welcomed them all. The ocean provided silence. The cliffs provided perspective. The isolation that once protected secrets now created peace. And slowly, something remarkable happened. People began healing. Not all at once, not perfectly, but genuinely. Conversations replaced silence. Friendships replaced isolation. Purpose replaced despair. One evening, Logan stood near the old cabin watching the sunset paint the Atlantic in shades of gold and orange. Children played near the shoreline. Several retired military dogs rested beside a group of veterans gathered around a fire. Laughter drifted across the island. Real laughter. Warm laughter. The kind that healed instead of hurt. Monica Reed joined him. She looked across the island, then toward the facility, then back at Logan. "You did it." Logan shook his head. "No." He looked toward the ocean. "Walter did." The attorney smiled. "Maybe." A lighthouse beam swept across the distant water. The light rotated slowly through the evening mist. Steady. Constant. Guiding. Much like Walter Grayson had done. After Monica departed, Logan returned to the underground facility. Most of the renovation work had been completed. Only a few storage rooms remained untouched. One of those rooms sat at the far end of the original archive section, a place he had never fully explored. Something drew him there that evening. Perhaps curiosity. Perhaps instinct. Perhaps gratitude. The room was small, dusty, quiet. Shelves lined the walls. Most stood empty. As he examined the final shelf, something caught his eye. A sealed metal box, hidden behind old records, waiting. Logan carefully removed it. The lock had long since rusted away. Inside rested a single envelope, nothing else. His name appeared on the front. Logan Mercer, the handwriting belonged to Walter Grayson. Logan sat down slowly, then opened the letter. The paper crackled softly. The words were short, simple, direct. Exactly the way Walter always communicated. Logan, if you're reading this, then you found everything. The truth, the evidence, the lies, but none of those things were ever the real inheritance. Logan paused, then continued reading. I chose you years ago, not because you were perfect, not because you were the strongest, because you understood loss. Only someone who has been broken truly understands the value of helping others heal. A long silence filled the room. Outside, distant laughter drifted through the facility. Children, veterans, families, life. The letter continued. Money disappears. Property changes hands. History fades. But purpose survives. The island was never meant to preserve secrets forever. It was meant to become a place where people remember who they are. Logan swallowed hard. His eyes blurred briefly. The final paragraph waited below. If Shadow led you here, then trust him one last time. He already knows what took me years to learn. The greatest mission is not exposing the truth. It is protecting those who still need it. The watch continues. Walter. For several moments, Logan simply sat there, listening, thinking, remembering. Then he folded the letter carefully. The realization settled gently over him. Like the tide, like the ocean, like peace. The inheritance had never been the island. It had never been the underground facility. It had never been the evidence. The inheritance was purpose, a final mission. One man passing responsibility to another. One generation of warriors helping the next. Logan stepped outside. The evening air carried the scent of salt and wood smoke. Above him, stars filled the sky. Below, veterans gathered around the fire. Families laughed. Dogs rested beside their handlers. Life moved forward. Shadow stood waiting near the cliff. The old German shepherd looked out across the Atlantic, watching the horizon, watching the lighthouse beams sweep across the water. Logan joined him. Together they stood in silence, the same way they had stood countless times before. Partners, friends, family. The lighthouse flashed again. Its light crossed the ocean, then the island, then the faces gathered below. For the first time since losing everything, Logan no longer felt abandoned. The grief remained. The memories remained. The scars remained. But they no longer defined him. Purpose did. Far below, the firelight flickered. Veterans shared stories. Retired military dogs slept peacefully beside them. The island that once hid secrets now offered hope. And somewhere beyond the darkness, beyond the ocean, beyond the years of loss and regret, Walter Grayson would have approved. The laughter that once followed Logan Mercer was gone. The purpose remained, and beside him, staring into the night, Shadow quietly kept watch. As he always had, as he always would. And the watch continued. If you believe loyalty, truth, and doing the right thing still matter, type yes in the comments. And if you've ever had a friend, a dog, or a fellow veteran who stood by you when nobody else did, we'd love to hear your story below. Subscribe and join us for more powerful stories of justice, dignity, and perseverance across the land of the free.